Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining Brian Formato and myself, Patty Comer from Accrue Partners, for our weekly webinar for the AccrueCares program. Today's topic is going to be unlocking the power of self-awareness, and we have a special guest speaker, Brian Formato. Today's presentation will be about 30 minutes long. We are going to have one poll, of which during that time, you'll need to exit from full screen to make your selection, and then we will announce the results. There is a Q&A feature and also a chat feature in this webinar. So if you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A and we'll answer those at the end. And also the chat just for general comments and to keep the webinar interactive. But at this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Brian. Brian and I have a long history together. I actually met him in carpool about, I don't know, so many years ago or so. But Brian has actually been a partner to Accrue Partners, helping us in our leadership development journey, both with our Emerging Leaders program, as well as coaching Amy and I and our team on how to become a better company and better people. So I couldn't think of anyone more appropriate to talk about the power of self-awareness and your strengths. Brian is the founder of Groove Management. You see his logo there, but he also has an executive coaching firm called Leadership Surf, which is an adventurous development leadership program, not in a traditional setting. Brian has worked with some of the most nationally known organizations. You'll see that on one of the screens coming up, but he coaches CEOs through all types of things, uncharted territory. So that would be a great one for now. But also led companies through acquisitions, changing business models through his coaching techniques. And he's just been a pleasure to work with and always a big fan of ours. So I'm happy to have him here today to assist all of us in our current journey in our jobs, career, and searching. So Brian, why don't you take it from here?
All right, Patty, thank you for the intro. I'm excited to be with everyone this morning, and this presentation is really for you. Rather than being focused on your organization, this is about your own growth and your own development. And as we go through this, you'll recognize kind of why I think that self-awareness is one of the most important things that each of us can develop throughout our lives. So as Patty mentioned a little bit about me, I consider myself an executive coach, and I've found this niche working a lot with first-time CEOs, making that transition from being a member of a team to then leading a team or leading an organization. I've got 20 years of corporate experience and worked for a number of large companies and small companies, had my ups and downs through 2001 post 9/11, 2008 recession, 2015, and now I'm helping companies navigate through COVID-19 and what's going on. And so as we go through this, I hope to share some of the insights that I've learned throughout my career, and hopefully give you guys some things that you can share and some tactical things that you can do, especially if you are in career transition. You'll notice also that there's a handout that you can download. There's going to be a couple activities that we're going to go through while we go through this presentation, where the handout could be helpful to do during the workshop or afterwards. So in the end, within the next 30 minutes, I hope to leave you with 10 lessons. And on the last slide, or one of the last slides, I will recap what the 10 lessons are. But as we go through the session, what you'll see is that this kind of orange bubble that says lesson 1 through 10, it will be on certain slides with lesson 1, 2, 3, etc. And so those are the takeaways that I hope you'll take away from this. But ultimately, I hope to provide you with some hope, some confidence, some tools for your own success, and some perspective, right? We're in kind of this uncharted waters. Nobody knows exactly what things are going to look like going forward and what the new normal at work is going to look like coming out of coronavirus. It's great to see that as we enter Memorial Day weekend that more and more states are opening back up, but we have to be cautious as we do that as well. So I'd like to start off by doing a quick poll. And so I'm going to launch this and ask each of you to tell us how you feel today. And it's really, it's a multiple choice poll with one answer per question. So if you could click on the feeling that matches kind of how you're feeling today best, please do so. Give it another minute here. All right, we've got 77% have voted, maybe one or two more, 81%, 85%. All right, we're going to leave it there, and I'm going to close and share the results with you. So as you can see, the top rated feeling was optimistic. Number 2 was anxious. Only 4% at depressed, which is good. 22% content and 9% positive. Now, our feelings are going to ebb and flow day in and day out, just like the stock market and the news of the day, whether there's going to be a vaccine available or not. But what's been interesting is I've been using this poll with lots of different clients. And what I've found is that the larger the organization, the more anxious and the more negative feelings people feel because they lack control. Versus with startups, entrepreneurs, I found that there's more positivity, more optimism. And so one of the things to think about, especially if you're in career transition, is your state of mind has a big impact on how effective you can be in your day-to-day work, with your family, with your interactions, and especially with your job search. And so, my recommendation to you is that you really give some thought to, choosing your attitude as you wake up each day. And yeah, there are going to be days that you feel down, but you have to look for the positives in your life. So this is actually a picture I took during one of those leader surf programs in Costa Rica, and these turtles travel thousands of miles to go and nest on this beach called Ostanelas. And this is a quote from former president of Harvard University. He says, "Behold the turtle, he only makes progress when he sticks his neck out." And I think this is a really fitting slide and thought for today, which is that we as people only make progress when we're willing to push out of our comfort zone and try new things. But more often than not, we tend to live our lives, and the older we get, as creatures of habit. And when things get disrupted, when we lose a job, when the world gets turned upside down, we're forced to stick our neck out. But that's when we make progress, not just physical in terms of movement, but also growth in terms of learning. And so we all need to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, be like the turtle, and stick our necks out a little bit more. In this age of Instagram, we hear so much, or we see all these images of people on Instagram, TikTok, and social media showing their accolades and their successes. Most people think that line to success is a straight line, a straight path, like the picture on the left. But in reality, successful people know that the path to success is more often than not a very windy road with a bunch of dead ends and a bunch of having to retrack your steps. And so think about this idea that, hey, anytime you hit a speed bump or you hit a dead end or a roadblock or you lose a job, it's an opportunity to pivot. It is one of those things that's going to grow character, and it's going to lead you further down the path long term. You just have to see it as a minor setback. So here's a slide with 24 uber successful and very famous people. You probably recognize many of them. A few of them that may not be recognized: Mozart down in the bottom there, Arthur Blank with the red tie on, Home Depot founder and owner of the Atlanta Falcons, right? You got Mark Cuban, you've got Thomas Edison, Walt Disney. What these people all have in common is they were all fired from a job. And it's interesting when you look at this list, and Oprah recently, if any of you have watched John, the guy from The Office, John Krasinski, he has a YouTube channel called Some Good News, and he had Oprah on, and she talked about getting fired as a news anchor, and that within a few months after that, she ended up with a talk show, and that led to her success. And so this idea of making a pivot, all of these people, they're getting fired actually led them to where they are today. And so I think it's important to keep perspective on where you're at, and that there's no shame potentially in losing a job. So a couple pieces of advice in terms of if you are in career transition. First, there's no shame in being in transition, especially given coronavirus and what has led to this. This is a time to reflect on your strengths, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to go about doing that. It's not a time to go chasing job titles and higher rungs on the corporate ladder. In fact, back to that path forward often takes stepping back a little bit. chase the things that make you happy, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. This idea of a healthy mind and a healthy body being related, use this as an opportunity to get in the best physical shape of your life, because if you're in good physical shape, you'll be in better mental shape as well. And so, having a healthcare regimen, doing your 10,000 steps a day, etc., is really important to powering through the uncertainty. And then ultimately, I'd say, don't necessarily settle for the first opportunity that comes your way unless you're in desperation and really, it's about the money. Use this as an opportunity to pivot and find what's right. While being in career transition can be humbling, more often than not, it leads people to better opportunities, as we saw on the slide before. So in the handouts, the first activity, if you can pull that up potentially, is to use this chart. What you see on the back of this slide is a picture of this mountain range in Norway that I've climbed a few times. It's a 9-hour hike if you do it right. And the last time that I hiked it, it turned into an 11.5-hour hike. And what we learned on that 11.5-hour hike is that trying to take a shortcut doesn't always yield the best result. We tried to cross this one section of the mountain only to find that there was still too much snow even in June. And we had to backtrack over an hour, which then increased the total time by 2.5 hours. And so what I found is that much like climbing a mountain, your career probably resembles a mountain range. You're going to have ups and downs. And so one thing to do, whether we do it right now or you do this as kind of a after the workshop activity, is think about each of the jobs, whether it was your first job, whether it was lifeguarding in high school or working, at a fast food place, and map each of the jobs that you've had and look at them in terms of career milestones, whether they were increases in responsibility or increases in pay or increases in positivity and satisfaction. My guess is that your career and your career path has ebbed and flowed, that it's gone up, and in times you've had to step back or step down in order to move higher. It's very seldom that people's career paths are linearly up. And so it's just doing this mapping can help put into perspective what those milestones are and help you realize that, hey, you've been a resilient person and you will bounce back from your current situation as well. It all starts kind of with this meme that's been popular of this kid that basically a positive attitude can conquer all. It starts in your mind. If you believe that you're going to be successful, this law of attraction or positivity, if you attract positive thoughts to you, then positive things will happen. And you've got to believe in yourself to get others to believe in you. And so this little engine then could mentality of I think I can, I know I can is important. So one of the things that I found in helping people to navigate the pandemic and all this uncertainty is to figure out what's certain and what's uncertain in your life. And one of the best things you can do is create routines and have a cadence. Are there things that you did before Corona that you're still doing? Do you get up around the same time every day? Do you make your bed every day at the same time? There's a great video of this general that talks about why making your bed is one of the requirements in the military, and it's because of task accomplishment. If you start every day accomplishing a task, it'll make it easier to then build momentum around positive tasks. Another one is I've been working with a leader, and what he told me was that he was struggling with getting started and getting motivated at home every morning. And as we talked about what his routine was before Corona, he said he uses his commute time to drive the 10 minutes to his office as a time to get in the right frame of mind and to get ready for the day. And I said to him, well, why couldn't you commute to your home office? He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you get up, you get in your car, and you go for a 10-minute drive, and then you pull back into your driveway at home and start your day. So for the past 60 days, that's exactly what he's been doing. And every time I talked to him, he was like, that was the best advice you ever gave. And so the idea is that you've got to control the things you can control in your world in order to make it work for you and bring some semblance of normalcy. Having a daily cadence and structure improves that feeling of self-worth and makes your job seeking more productive. In the past, when I met with people that were in job transition, I always recommended that they consider going to a co-working space. This is a picture of Advent co-working in Charlotte because it creates routine of having to go somewhere and the social interactions. Now, because of the shutdown, that's not possible, but there are other ways that you can create that environment. So let's get into this whole notion of self-awareness and why it's so important. So let's start with just kind of a basic definition. So if awareness is knowing what's happening around you, then self-awareness is knowing how you're experiencing those things. It's the ability to know what we're doing and to understand why we're doing it, all those feelings. I believe that self-awareness comes from reflection. So this picture of me in the car looking in the side view or rear view mirror really symbolizes where self-awareness comes from. There's only one you on this planet, one person that's been through all the positive and all the negative stuff that you've been through. And those experiences, both positive and negative, have shaped who we are. So in order to understand who we are and how we react in given situations to build self-awareness, we have to look back. We have to reflect on our childhood memories. We have to reflect on those milestones and those things that shaped who we are in our lives. An easy way to put this in some perspective is to use the Superman analogy, right? There's certain things we all know about Superman. I believe that he's the greatest superhero, and I'm going to share with you why. Right? He's got certain hidden superpowers. The ones that are obvious are, we know that he's able to leap tall buildings. We know that he's faster than a speeding bullet. We know that he's more powerful than a locomotive. We know that he has X-ray vision. But the one thing we know about Superman that we don't know about any of the other superheroes is that kryptonite is his one weakness, right? Superman's hidden power is that he knows fully what his strengths are and what his weaknesses. He knows how to play to his strengths, and he knows how to compensate for his weakness. In all the work that I've done over the past 25 years, trying to define what it takes to be an effective leader, the one thing that I've found in common with the best leaders, the best CEOs, the top performing people in organizations is that they are fully self-aware. They know themselves better than anyone else, and they've figured out what their superpowers are, as well as what their kryptonite is. Lesson number 2, self-awareness is the biggest differentiator between great leaders and everyone else. If you want to be an effective leader, and that could be of just leading yourself or leading a team of people, you have to tap into your self-awareness. So one activity that I'd like you to do, and this is in the handouts, and we won't do it now, but take this as a homework assignment coming out of this workshop, is to list your 3 superpowers. Much like Superman with X-ray vision, and faster than a locomotive, what are 3 things that you do better than anyone else that you know? And it'd be worth checking those with other people, getting their input and feedback to make certain that you're calibrated. Likewise, it's super important to define what your kryptonite is. What is the one thing that gets you in the most trouble? When does it get you in trouble? And more importantly, this is back to Superman. How many people have you told about your kryptonite, and why haven't you told more people? You see, Superman has shared with the world that kryptonite is his weakness. And he does it because he believes that more people will shield him from it than use it against him. And so this idea of owning your weakness, sharing it with others, and then figuring out ways to navigate around it. I always say, and the reason my company is called Groove Management is I believe everyone has a groove, something that makes them better, special, or different. Focusing on trying to compensate for your weakness doesn't do you as much good as shining a brighter light on your strengths, but you have to own your weakness. So lesson number 3, acknowledging and sharing your weakness with others is actually a sign of strength. It makes you more approachable, and that vulnerability is one of the things that people will come to admire in you. I would say be the leader you were meant to be. When you try to study and be a leader like someone else and emulate their behaviors, you reject the power that you have to be the leader that you were meant to be. Leadership isn't about following, it's about leading, it's about being an individual, it's about pioneering and being the only one. So if leadership's about individuality, stop trying to be like someone else and start being like yourself, but take that to a higher level by shining a brighter light on your strengths. So how do we get better at knowing ourselves? So this is just a simple model. It's called the Johari window. It was created by 2 guys, Joe Ingram and Harry Luft, and they combined their names into Johari, Joe and Harry, right? And the idea is that there are things that we know about ourselves and others know about us, which is in the open arena. There are things that are unknown to us, but others know about us that are in the blind spot. And those are the things where getting feedback from others is super important. There's the hidden area, which are things that we know about ourselves, but we don't share with others. And your weakness may be one of those things. And the idea of why do we do that? And the more we can push things from either the hidden area or the blind spot into the open arena, the more transparency we can show, the more effective we can be, and the more self-aware we become. The unknown area obviously is unknown to us and to others. So how do you go about building self-awareness? There's several different tactics and ways that you can do this. As examples, one is using personality assessments, and I'll talk for a second about that. Another is having a coach, whether formal or informal mentors. And then there's also self-reflection, right, and self-directed learning. So how do you know that you're talented, right? This idea of, as you track through your career, there's certain things, certain tasks and activities that are a challenge for other people to do that just come naturally and easily for certain people, right? I can't sing, I can't play music. The only music I can play is I can play the radio, right? But there are people that could sit down and pick up an instrument and just, by ear, play something. That is a talent that they have. And so the idea is figuring out where are those tasks, what are the things that come naturally and easily for you? Have you benchmarked those skills against others? Are there certain things that you enjoy doing more than other things? We tend to gravitate towards the tasks and activities that we're good at versus the ones that we're not very good at. Many of you may have watched The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan story on ESPN. And one of the things is that talent really is about alignment and fit. Michael Jordan is, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. He was a pretty mediocre baseball player. And so the idea here is that certain talents are not transferable between jobs and between industries. And so you've got to make certain that there's alignment between the talent that you have and the job that you're pursuing. So how do you go about getting this type of input from an assessment? One of the assessments that's gained the most traction over the past several years is one called StrengthsFinder. And there's a book by Don Clifton called Discovering Your Clifton Strengths. It's available on Amazon. We're going to share the link with you as well. It's $16.04. But what's awesome about buying this book, which talks about how to focus on your strengths, is that in addition to the book, you get a code in the book to then go and take the StrengthsFinder assessment, which will give you what your top 5 strengths are off of this 36 strength assessment. And it's a really good way of getting some validation around the things that are in your sweet spot and what your strengths are. I'd highly recommend the book and the assessment to everyone that's on the call. Another kind of fun way to do this is to take what's called the self-awareness test. And there's a cool YouTube video, we'll share this link as well, that you can watch, where this guy goes about doing this self-awareness test and captures it all on video. And so what he does is he describes for himself, he writes the answers to these 3 questions. How would you describe me in 3 words? What's my worst quality and what's my best quality? And then he goes and he asks his parents, he asks his brothers and sisters, he asks his best friends, he asks his coworkers, these same questions, and he videotapes their answers. I don't necessarily think you have to videotape the answers, but it's worth asking these 3 questions to others in your network and to see how your answers to these questions align with their answers to these questions. And it's a way to know just how self-aware you are. And if you're off the mark, then maybe heeding the input and reconsidering what your best quality and your worst quality is. If there's consistency among what they say versus what you say, consider that they may be more right than you, right? And it's back to that blind spot and exploring it. Having a trusted friend is definitely important. And in addition to those questions, here's 5 other questions that you could ask a trusted friend that could be helpful. What behaviors do you believe are limiting my potential? How do you feel when you're talking to me? Am I a good listener? Do I engage with you? What do you think I'm good at? What are some of my weaknesses? If you had to describe me to someone, what would you say? Is there anything you avoid saying to me because you're afraid of how I react? Having this kind of a raw conversation, especially if you're in transition, could really help you to kind of get at some things, some feelings, some behaviors that are either helping or hurting you. But it requires, once again, vulnerability and being willing to trust someone. So as you go into this idea of your job search, one of the biggest lessons that I learned, and it was not around job searching for me, it was actually when I started my business. Started reaching out to everyone in my network and asking them if I could do business with their companies. And I got a lot of maybe, and it didn't really go anywhere. After a while, it then dawned on me, what if I asked a different question? who do you know that I should meet that's not in my network? And that all of a sudden opened up so many opportunities because these people then became endorsers. They would introduce me to someone else and say, I've known Brian because we work together and he's a great guy and has a really interesting business now. And so using your network to introduce you to their network is a great way to advance your career search. If you look at just this LinkedIn data here, for instance, let's say you have 780 people in your LinkedIn network. If you look at their LinkedIn network, that second degree contact, that number jumps to 161,000. If you go to the third degrees away, it's 6 million. And so when you look at it and you think about, you know what, I need to expand the reach. Don't just focus on who you know, focus on asking them who they know and how those people can help you. And that's lesson number 4. As you're job searching, I like to think of it as taking a detective approach. Rather than just applying to advertised roles, if you think about it, with the number of unemployed people out there right now, anytime a company posts a job on their website or on LinkedIn or on Indeed or any other job board, there's just hordes of people that are going to apply to that job. Instead, think of it like a detective. Identify a company that you would like to work for. Identify who the decision maker is. And no offense to HR, but I always see HR as trying to figure out why not to hire someone versus why to. The hiring manager is much more objective than HR. And so figure out who the decision maker is, and then figure out the email protocol in the company, right? Is it first initial last name? Is it first name dot last name? Is it first name underscore last name? Yeah, you may have to take a couple stabs at this, but Google can be your friend and you can do searches to find the person's email address and their email protocol and send them a compelling email. The other option would be, imagine sending them snail mail, an actual letter and resume. It could be a little bit, I don't know, intrusive, but imagine sending it to their home since they're not in the office right now. You know, you get a letter in the mail with a cover letter from a compelling candidate. You know, after sanitizing it, you'd probably open the mail and you may pay a little bit more attention to it. So part of it is you've got to figure out a way to stand out from the crowd. Compelling cover letter, explain your interest in the role, show your passion for working, impress the company with your knowledge, you know, of the products and services, show why you're the right person. You've got to differentiate yourself, but keep it to less than 1 page as you put this together. And when you build your resume is your personal branding and marketing statement. It needs to focus on what you can do and what you have done. And you know, I believe strongly that you should update your resume so it doesn't say that you're still at your previous employer. It shows that date as terminating. When companies think that you're still there and then they interview you or the recruiter reaches out and finds out that you haven't been there for 4 months, that's a red flag. That's a lack of transparency. You're better off saying, I'm a job seeker. You know, I left my job on such and such date. You know, show them also that you have a passion for things outside of work. Oftentimes connecting hobbies is a way that people take a greater interest in a candidate. Your LinkedIn profile is really important. Write a headline that rocks. Here's another book to think about, How to Write a Killer LinkedIn Profile. Yeah, the book has lots of different tips on how to do this, and it's updated every year, so there's a 2020 version of it. The other thing that I'm finding is that because of the power of remote working now, you can expand your search outside of the geography in which you work or live and apply to jobs across the country at this point with the expectation that you are not planning to move or relocate for a job. And more companies are going to open themselves up and consider people outside of their geography. And so instead of limiting your search, if you're in Charlotte, to just Charlotte, expand your search. Search nationally, and if you see a job, there may be an opportunity to continue to do it from Charlotte and to be the top candidate for it. So we've got to open our eyes and our minds to new ideas and new opportunities. We've got to think differently. This idea of expanding outside of your geography being one of them, redefining who we are and what our experiences stand for and what we're capable of doing. And that's one of the lessons. I believe that too often people chase other people's definition of success. If it's chasing the money, you may end up in a terrible place doing a job that you hate. find what you're passionate about and find a way to turn it into a career. Sometimes the path to success is going to require back to the mountain range that you retrace some steps, and that's all right. You have a step back to go forward is going to be okay. Look in the mirror. Reflection is super powerful. You may start a journal and write some things down every day. Find some books around self-help and self-motivation that work for you. Listen to some podcasts, watch some TED Talks, do some meditation. I find that I do my best thinking when I'm exercising. And so, start an exercise regimen. There's a famous YouTuber that has basically made millions of dollars traveling the world, and his name is Christian LeBlanc. And when he set out to do this, quit his job, got his camera, and started traveling. He said, if you follow your passion, you cannot fail. And I do believe this, that that intersection between your passion and profession is where you're going to be happiest and do your best work. The Leader Surf program that I created really combined my passion for surfing and for developing people. And so if you can find that intersection, you'll do your best work and you'll be happiest for it. For me, I love surfing. I love developing people. I love international travel. I love helping others, and I like leadership development. By putting those things together, writing them down on a piece of paper, I then found a way to create an opportunity that merged those things. Final book recommendation is a book by Sean Thompson. He's a world champion surfer, but he wrote this book called The Code, and it's 12 I will statements. And this idea is that if you write a statement that says I will, it gives yourself power. And so if you can write down 3 things coming out of this workshop that you're going to commit yourself to doing, whether it's get 10,000 steps a day, whether it's to work on redefining your success and what it means for you, whether it's to take that self-awareness test and invite people to give you feedback. Writing down 3 statements that start with I will is the first step to making them happen. Ultimately, and the last lesson is really around change. And this is a picture from American Ninja Warrior, but I also think of it as really the ultimate change model, the flying trapeze. In order to embrace the new, we've got to be willing to release the old. If you don't let go of what you were doing and how you were doing things as you try to embrace a new way, you're going to get pulled in 2 different directions and you're destined to fail and to fall. So we've got to learn the right time to let go of the past in order to embrace the future. And the future is going to look different. The world of work is changing and evolving every day, and we've got to be ready for the new normal. So the 10 lessons to recap: the path to success is rarely a straight line. Self-awareness is the differentiator between great leaders and everyone else. Acknowledging and sharing your weakness with others is actually a sign of strength, so be willing to say what your kryptonite is and share it with more. Networking is not about who you know, but about who they know, and you can expand your network exponentially this way. You got to open your mind and your eyes to new ideas and opportunities. Don't say no at the start of something, instead say why not. Misery comes from following someone else's definition of success. Figure out what makes you happy and pursue that as a career, as a passion, as something you can do. And it may mean entering the nonprofit world, for instance. Sometimes that path forward does require retracing our steps. And when we retrace our steps, we get more perspective. That intersection where your passion, your profession intersect, that's ultimately where you're going to be happiest and be able to perform your best work. When you say I will, and especially if you write it down, you give yourself power, right? And then that's the first step to building momentum and having success. And the last one is you've got to be willing to release the old in order to embrace the new. So that's what I wanted to leave you with. The way that I look at it is that each of us has a groove, right? Something that we do that makes us better, special, or different. Figuring out what your groove and tapping into it represents the journey to self-awareness. And that's when you're going to be happiest and most effective and find the career and the job where you can be most productive, and find the most joy. So use this as an opportunity to reframe and redefine what it means for you. I think that given coronavirus, it's given us all perspective, spending more time at home, spending more time with family, cooking more meals, enjoying the stars at night versus the airplanes overhead. All of that for me have been positives that have come out of this experience. And so you've got to look for the bright spots and look for the opportunity. I was happy to see 35% of you said that you were optimistic. for the 30% that are anxious, it's fair, own that feeling, but don't let it actually, inhibit your ability to push forward. So with that, I want to say thank you, and I'd welcome you to open up and ask any questions that you may have. And then in addition to that, you could reach out to me directly, or there's a number of other blog posts that you may find helpful on the group management website. So somebody asked the question around what are a few of your superpowers? So for me, my superpowers, I'm a creative problem solver, and I don't like standard solutions. I like out-of-the-box solutions. I'm always looking for provocative ways to solve problems. Sometimes it gets me into trouble, but it also leads to some pretty cool stuff. And so I think of myself as an innovator. I'm also a people person. This has been really difficult for me to be stuck at home and not interacting with people as much. So Zoom and video conferencing has definitely been really important to me. So those are just two things that come to mind for me. There's plenty more, but this isn't about me. This is about you guys thinking about what they are for you and making certain that you get validation on them from others. Far away, somebody else ask a question.
I know Natalie's trying to type a question because she's texting me. See if I can figure out what the question is. Well, I certainly appreciated the presentation. I actually took a picture of the code. I will be myself. I will dream. I love all that. That was very motivating.
It's a really cool, I got the book right here. It's a really cool book. And he actually did, during COVID, he did a webinar on it. And he basically tells the stories in the book, and you can watch it on YouTube as well. So if you don't buy the book, you can still kind of understand where it came from. But he's been doing a speaking tour and talking to, big companies, employees, as well as schools around the world, and getting students to say what they will commit to doing. And it's really kind of interesting to hear, how kids want to change the world and what their I will statements represent.
Well, definitely we'll look into that. When we send the recap, it'll have links to everything that Brian's discussing, the books and resources for you, as well as the presentation, so you can go back and reflect on the questions that you need to ask yourself and be thinking about. I've personally taken the Strength Finder, and it was a great way of just confirming what I was good at and what areas that I wasn't good at, so that I could lead with confidence. So for $16, I think it's definitely worth it. So, but we do thank you for your time, Brian. It was fantastic. Thank you for investing in time to pull everything together. And for everybody that's part of the AccrueCares program, if you need us, just reach out. Next week, we'll do another just general job searching Q&A, and you'll get more information on that in the upcoming days. But have a great Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy time with your family and outside.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Be well.
Bye.